And all of the new wrestling announcers either come from the Michael Cole school of fake voiced over the top WWF announcing, or the excrement style of we're doing announcing over VHS tapes in our mom's basement because that's the way that we've done our local wrestling federation. And there's practically nobody in, but that's why it's so good to see Ian Riccaboni, by the way. And we've talked about this, and we haven't mentioned Ring of Honor yet today. This might bring this up real quick. Ian Riccaboni, I believe he worked a little bit with Kevin Kelly during the transition when Kevin was still there, but he's a young guy that calls wrestling like a sport, and you don't believe is conning you or bullshitting you. It sounds natural. And he's got a great delivery and great vocabulary. And he and Caprice Coleman, we've praised them as the best announced team in wrestling because Caprice is the ex-jock that's glib, and it gives the color analyst role that you find now in everything from football to baseball to basketball, etc., to UFC. It's the same thing here. And this past weekend's Ring of Honor show I'll bring up was the first round of the semifinals in their Pure tournament. Jay Lethal beat David Finlay, and Jonathan Gresham beat Matt Sydal to advance. And the match, Jay Lethal to me is the star. He was the star of that program, the star power. But both the matches were good. The guys are working hard and they're trying to be serious and legitimate because they're, as we've talked about, they're creating a baseline with this Pure tournament. They're showing people what the product is supposed to be, wrestling with people following the rules. And I had actually, when I was watching Lethal's match with Finlay, and they do the tail of the tape, and they do the stats, and the announcers set up the history and the rules of the contest, and it's so effortless, and it sounds like you're listening to a sports program. But I had written down in my notes, I said, you know what? When somebody does cheat or do an angle, it will stand out. It will mean something because they're not doing them every segment. If they have blood, it'll be more shocking because you haven't seen it in a while. Things out of the ordinary will be, guess what? Out of the ordinary because you don't see them all the time. In this program with no fake crowd noise and no seizure-inducing lights and pyro. They even pitched to the breaks, by the way, talking about the announcing. Imagine that. In Jay Lethal's match, they had a great spot where Lethal was forced to use one of his rope breaks. He was in a hole that he couldn't get out of, and he was suffering, and you're only allowed 2 rope breaks, and he had to use one of them. He had to make that decision. Holy shit! Instead of a goddamn bunch of fucking midgets dressed up as goddamn circus clowns piling out of a fucking VW bus and honking funny horns. And then, as a matter of fact, in that match also, it was almost 15 minutes in. Lethal hit a dive as a logical offensive move, threw his guy back in the ring to try to beat him. There was a reversal and a counter of that, and then Jay hit his fucking finish once, 1, 2, 3. And the other match, Gresham got the tap out on Matt Sydal. He had a gory special, you know, the upside-down surfboard? The gory special, which he dropped the guy into a fucking leg and arm hold and got the tap out. I've never seen it before. It was fucking cool. It was a solid match. Being honest, as I said, Jay Lethal was the star of the show. I've thought the world of him as a talent. I'm the one that signed him to Ring of Honor in, what was it, 2011? When TNA was stupid enough to not re-sign him. Because they had too many of Hulk Hogan's broke down fucking best friends and neighbors coming in. But on this program also, they finally, after 5 or 6 weeks, they did an angle. Vincent has tattoos all over his body, has the dreadlocks. He looks like a Rob Zombie. He's the horror king. That's his gimmick. And he actually was a young man who came to one of our tryout seminars 10 years ago and got on Ring of Honor's radar, and now he's a used commodity there. And he was doing a promo when Matt Taven hit the ring, and Matt Taven apparently has been gone for quite some time, and attacked Vincent and beat the piss out of him. And there was good about this and there was bad, which we'll get to. But let me say, Matt Taven is another guy. 10 years ago, he came to a camp. We started bringing him into the program. We started booking him. I thought he was going to be a huge fucking star. And unfortunately, he got sidetracked. He went to tryouts in, it might have still been FCW at that point, but down in Florida, and they jacked him around for a while and kept him hidden and never did anything with him and then let him go. And then he came back to Ring of Honor and then he tore a knee up real bad. I saw him back about five years or so ago, and he was coming back to a wrestling school to help out up in Connecticut when he was still in a knee immobilizer and everything. So he had that setback. But Matt Taven, I hate that he shaved his head. Or he hadn't shaved his head. He shaved his hair off on the sides. He's still got a little on the top, but he had long fucking rock star hair. What a fucking good looking kid. He was like early 20s then, so he's still in his early 30s. Very athletic. If he'd had an unobstructed path without injuries and people dicking him around, I think he'd be a big star today. But the problem I had with it, this was an angle, and it stood out because it was different, as I've said, and nobody else is doing it on these programs, so that was good. But we see one of the drawbacks of trying to do this in the COVID era. Apparently Sinclair, I read on PW Insider a while back, at their tapings have had the most strict COVID protocols. They changed the mat after every match. God, we couldn't even get them.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we couldn't even get them by fucking lunch 10 years ago, right? That Greyhound bus ticket for Prince Nana and the Hurricane to come down from New York to Baltimore. Well, that wasn't pre-approved. But anyway, there's only the wrestlers, the referee, and the camera crew allowed inside the arena when they're taping a match. All these protocols where they can't be together anywhere. So the problem with the angle was Taven jumps on fucking Vincent and is beating the shit out of him. Nobody's coming to help. Therein lies I know. And of course, they're doing that on shows where there's fucking 100 people within the goddamn ringside area, and they're still not doing it. Here, I can give them the fucking benefit because they weren't doing it that way, but it shows the problem. The longer the beating went on with nobody trying to stop it, nobody ringing a bell, nobody trying to pull them apart, nobody running around wringing their hands and clutching their pearls, it doesn't have the urgency and the danger, etc. But what Matt did was he pulled the mat up and then the padding up, and he gave an inverted DDT to Vincent face first on the ringwood, which looked good. Then he rolled out and set a table up on the floor, put Vincent on the table, and splashed off the top rope, splashed him through the table on the floor. He put a hat on a hat. Either one of those things would have been perfect as an exclamation point. Both of them was too much, and it hindered not having people trying to help, but that's understandable in the situation. But you can't do long heat angles without people trying to stop it. So anyway, they did something and it stood out because they haven't been doing it every week. That's what they're wanting. I hope they don't do it next week. Just can't start doing it this quick every week. And they're setting up their product to mean something just by itself, so that when somebody deviates from that, it also stands out. So if anybody wants to see all the things we were promised with AEW, watch Ring of Honor, and don't expect to see the fucking sodomizing of fucking 12 lesbian nuns on the program. They're wrestling, and they're going to wrestle for a while, and then they're going to start turning up the heat. And it's going to be gradual, and it's going to mean something. See, they're calling me now for more ideas. Hold on, let me... There, I'll just hang up on.
Who was that?
I don't know who it was. I don't have time to talk to these people. We've got to be broadcasting. But anyway, Ring of Honor is a wrestling program, and it's going to hopefully stay a wrestling program and then gradually open things up, while meanwhile on all the other channels, everybody is fucking engaging in bestiality in the fucking garden. Yeah, it's a sport, folks. The reason why it works is because it's presented as a sport, and then people deviate away from these things. And I don't know why everybody doesn't understand that you got to start there. It's like basketball, baseball, football, anything else. People are trained to do these things. There's specialized positions, specialized, there's centers, there's guards, there's tackles. Not like you when you were in school and played football, you guarded the water and tackled anybody that tried to steal it. But there's all different positions and highly trained people in each place. It's like that new podcast we were talking about, hosted by Greg Olsen, who was a Seattle Seahawk tight end, used to play for the Carolina Panthers. And it's TE1. You know what that stands for? Tight end.
That's right.
Tight end, because Greg Olsen, a 14-year NFL veteran, 5th all-time in receiving yards at his position, the first tight end ever to have 3 straight seasons of 1,000 receiving yards. He is investigating the evolution of the tight end position for all you football nerds out there. From extra lineman to dynamic playmaker, through discussions with Hall of Famers and current superstars like George Kittle and Travis Kelce, Shannon Sharpe, Tony Gonzalez, other household names. Folks, you'll find out how every great player started off at a different position before transitioning to tight end, how they finally found their niche, what makes tight ends a unique position. I've almost never been able to get into the tight end position, even with several girls helping me at the same time. Folks, you'll find out about these guys balancing the glamour or the big receptions with the grind of sacrificing your body and throwing blocks, who the Hall of Famers looked up to for inspiration, all that. You got to listen to TE1 with Greg Olsen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. TE1. It's A1.